So now it's time to start the session 1 on the European policy session with Mathieu Fromentin from the European Commission and Alexander Asgal from the European University Association. This session is shared by Béatrice Marin from the Doctoral School Policy Officer at the University and myself. So please, Mathieu, if you could come forward.
Well, first of all, thank you very much for having me. I'm really looking forward to hear all your presentations and your research works in the next few days. And I'm also really happy to have seen François Gémen, which used to be my teacher, but I think he's no longer around. But yeah, so that already gives away that fact I'm a political scientist initially. So that's already there for transdisciplinarity. And I am currently a policy officer at the DG RTD. So okay, so it's a bit, is it going too fast? Jesus. Okay, whatever. So yeah, DG RTD, it's a DG responsible for research and innovation at the European Commission. It's the one that is composed of numerous, as you can see here on the organigram, numerous different people working on very different topics. I personally work for 2 directorates that you will see in a second if the slides move. The one is called Healthy Planet, which aims at accelerating the transition by 2050 to climate neutrality, to develop production and consumption within safe planetary boundaries and regenerate key ecosystems. And for that, we focus on 4 thematic, okay, so, EV. Bon, c'est pas très grave. C'est pas très important. So, now we're good. Focusing on 4 key topics: circular economy and bio-based systems, bioeconomy in food systems, climate and planetary boundaries, which also includes Earth observation and biodiversity, and healthy oceans and seas. But I also work for the Clean Planet Directorate, which is basically the technological arm of research and innovation in this case, on clean energy transition, future urban and mobility systems, low emissions future industries, and also Euratom, meaning fusion and fission nuclear energy. Its aim is to accelerate the green and digital transition, and it's to contribute to the EU's resilience, strategic autonomy, and the global sustainable competitiveness of the EU economy. Now, we work on those topics because it's really urgent to do so. As already pointed out previously by François Gémen, and as all of you already know since you're working in the field, the IPCC already, tells us that climate impacts and climate change, or climate crisis, or I'm not sure what I should use, is going to have even worse effects than we anticipated. And every time we discuss this, it's actually getting worse. We already know that it's going to have agricultural production losses, water scarcity, sea level rise, health challenges, etc. We already identified 3 of the 4 risks within the European Union that were identified by the IPCC in its latest report, meaning extreme heat over land and sea, water scarcity, and negative effects on food production. I mean, I can also cite the French agroclimatologist Serge Zacca, who is already identifying that we are having 13 months in a row above the normal temperatures in France. And March is going to be likely the 14th. There are countless examples of that, for instance, also the floods in Belgium or in Germany in 2021 that were obviously exacerbated by climate change impacts. Well, this is very sad news, of course, but we remain hopeful to, at least improve the situation. As François Gémen said, we're not going to come back to what we were before, but at least we try to mitigate the impacts. And we can still limit climate change and limit biodiversity losses. And that's what we do as European Union. What we do is framed in the context of the European Green Deal. So those objectives are laid out in this Green Deal, which is a roadmap of our actions over the next 30 years. It was presented back in 2019, and it covers all economic sectors to reach a climate neutrality by 2050 on the whole continent. So it's quite an ambitious objective. It's going beyond normal policy. It's going beyond investment cycles. It's going beyond just a simple climate plan. The idea is that the cost of inaction is enormous, even above any investment we're doing right now in climate mitigation or current actions overall. The idea is also to set out fundamental change and transformation of Europe into a greener, fairer, and more resilient society. It's also trying to include citizens in improving their well-being and health while overcoming social divides and delivering on fairness aspects. As you can see, there are 11 different topics that are here covered by the European Green Deal. We'll go over 2 of them that are of interest for us today to give you a broad overview because we have limited time and also it's quite complicated to go over everything. The first one is going to be the climate ambition that gave birth to what we call the climate law. This is the core element. This is the core element of the Green Deal, and it's basically setting the carbon neutrality of the European continent by 2050, and also setting 55% reduction of greenhouse gas emissions by 2030, compared to 1990 levels. This 55% target was the centerpiece of the Fit for 55 package, which is an interconnected proposal that aims at making all sectors of the economy capable of delivering on the 2030 targets, both in a fair, cost-effective, and competitive manner. I'm not going to go into details in each proposal, since it's covering climate, energy, fuels, transport, built environments, land use and forestry, and numerous other topics. But I can tell you it's strengthening 8 different pieces of legislation and proposing 5 new initiatives. All proposals are overlapping, connected, complementary, and each proposal will then impact the other. And I can already announce you the good news, at least one of the few good news we can have on this topic, is that we're already on track to meet our 2030 targets on climate and energy goals, because we're currently set to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions by 57%. So we're outpacing our Fit for 55 objective. The second element I was going to talk about is the more recent and quite actual industrial strategy for clean and circular economy. It's linked to the current energy security crisis that we are currently experiencing. And we're basically taking that action to safeguard greater economic resilience, boost competitiveness of Europe's net zero industry, and accelerate the transition to carbon neutrality. There are 4 pillars to that plan. And yeah, there are different levels. The first one would be the Net Zero Industry Act, which basically is considerably increasing the technological development, manufacturing production, and installation of net zero products in Europe over the coming 10 years. The second integral piece of legislation is the Critical Raw Materials Act, which will help ensure that Europe has sufficient access to those materials like rare earths, which are vital for the manufacturing of key technologies like batteries, photovoltaic, electrolyzers, advanced biofuels, etc. Since we expect the demand for critical raw materials to skyrocket in the global race to reach net zero, the idea is to basically control the same supply chain. And it's basically also, trying to act on all levels, possible levels of this value chain, to diversify our imports, to improve the ability to monitor and mitigate risks in the supply chain, recycle what we have on the ground. For each of these components, as you might already noticed, there's actually a core element of research and innovation. And research and innovation is the engine of transition in the European Green Deal. This is happening through the program of Horizon Europe. That is basically, the enabler of the Green Deal. It's providing the scientific evidence base for much of the work that we're doing, and it's helping address trade-offs, identify opportunities, basically enabling what we're doing. This morning, I would like to highlight a few roles of R&I in several key areas. We're working closely with stakeholders, researchers, but also industries to advance the green transition. Okay. Yeah. So first of all, we're going to go over Horizon Europe, how it works, what it is actually, and how it delivers. Horizon Europe and its predecessor, Horizon 2020, are the world's largest publicly funded research and innovation program. It has a budget of 95.5 billion euros over the period 2021 to 2027. And at least 35 of this budget will be allocated to climate action. To put it very shortly, as you can see, there are 3 pillars in one cross-cutting component. The first pillar is the excellent science pillar. And this is happening through, as you can see, the European Research Council, the Marie Skłodowska-Curie actions, and research infrastructure. I think the most relevant one, apparently some of you are already familiar with this one, are the Marie Skłodowska-Curie actions, which are preparing the next generations of scientists and accelerating the circulation and use of knowledge, leading to solutions to the main societal challenges that we're experiencing, like climate change crisis, or health or growing inequalities. Between 2014 and 2020, the Marie Skłodowska-Curie actions have already supported 65,000 PhD or researchers in Europe and funded over 1,000 excellent international doctoral networks. I'm also going to mention the third pillar before going back to the second one, which is called Innovative Europe. It's promoting breakthrough innovations and fostering development in our society and ecosystems to basically, enable those innovations to reach market. It's providing financing through venture capital funding with a budget of over 10 billion euros over that same period. And then now the transversal actions. Those are meant to strengthen the European research area, widening participation and spreading excellence. I left out voluntarily the second pillar because this is the one we are, me personally at least, working the most on. And it's basically the global challenges and the European industrial competitiveness. And its aim is to turn the result of our excellent research into market solutions that are available to citizens. It encompasses 6 famous clusters. The first one is health, then there's culture, creativity, inclusive society, civil security for society, digital industry and space, and then the 2 most relevant for today's debate, climate, energy, mobility, and food, bioeconomy, natural resources, agriculture, and environment. There are also, under this pillar, the Joint Research Center, the Horizon Europe missions, and the partnerships, but we will go back to that afterwards. So first go over the cluster 6, which is the one that is based on healthy planet. It's supporting a transformative change of the economy and society to reduce environmental degradation, to halt the decline of biodiversity, and to better manage natural resources, while also helping the EU's climate objectives. The current objective for the 23-24 work program, which is basically defining our actions over a 2 years period, the sustainable management of natural resources, food and nutrition security, and the transition from fossil fuels, linear economies to resource-efficient, resilient, low-emission, and low-carbon economies, circular economies. It has a budget of 1.9 billion euros over the same period of 2023-2024. To complete this environmental approach, we have also the cluster 5, which is the technological arm of decarbonization. Its aim is to approach the most important greenhouse gas emitting sectors on a comprehensive manner, in a holistic way, while boosting their competitiveness, resilience, and utility for citizens and society. We are working essentially on transport these days, for instance, on zero-emission transport or multimodal transport. We also aim for greater electrification of societies that will enable reduction of emissions in mobility. This is also very important to include this circularity by design to reduce the consumption of raw materials and recycle whatever we have on the European ground. So we tend to include this circularity approach as well in this technological side. It has a budget of 2.7 billion euros over the period 23-24. In addition to those clusters, we have what we call Horizon Europe missions. The idea is to mobilize and foster innovation. It's basically a portfolio of actions, of projects, of initiatives that try to tackle a specific objective, to maximize the final impact as if, well, more than just adding single actions. The idea is that this will create synergies that will end up having more impact than individual approaches. There are 5 missions, but we're going to talk about 4 of them today because the last one is on cancer, which is related but less, let's say, core for our activities, at least in our directorate. They are crucial to the implementation of the European Green Deal. They are interlinked, cross-cutting, and intend on mobilizing breakthroughs and bringing solutions to challenges that we are facing in this century, while breaking disciplinary silos and bringing together a wide range of stakeholders. The idea is also to change the approach level. It's not centralized in Brussels or Paris. The idea is to create local synergies, ensure policy coordination across different levels of government. We try to promote experimentation as regions remain testbeds to experiment solutions and mobilize citizens. And we try to also build ownership and mobilize citizens in these actions. 4 of them that we have here are addressing environmental issues, reflecting the urgency and gravity of the interlinked climate, biodiversity, and pollution crisis. We're going to cover briefly each one of them to have an idea of what they're doing and what their aim is and how they can be helpful for both our work, your work, and overall the climate in Europe. The first one we're going to talk about is the Adaptation to Climate Change mission. As climate change is challenging most of our assumptions about weather, the functioning of our infrastructure, of water ecosystems, we still need to cut emissions and build, crucially, our resilience to a more hostile climate. We intend on reaching our goals by making adaptation smarter, by making it faster and more systemic. For instance, by developing a knowledge base and stimulating innovation and fostering collaboration across the EU. This mission aims at supporting at least 150 regions and communities in becoming climate resilient by 2030. And it aims at delivering 75 large-scale projects on the ground. It intends on co-creating change, mobilizing a diverse set of EU and national resources towards its objectives. We currently have 284 EU regions and local authorities from 25 different member states, and also 17 associated countries that have signed this mission's charter. We also have the involvement of numerous private companies, but also Services Center, Reachers Network, and local action groups who endorse the charter as friends of the mission. Then we're going to briefly go over the Soil Deal for Europe, which is the second mission we're going to talk about, which is basically trying to set up a network of 100 living labs and lighthouses in rural and urban areas, in which people from various sectors and backgrounds will experiment and test solutions for soil health. The idea is to transform food systems, to enable nutritious food to lead a healthy life, to guarantee food security in Europe and resilience. Our aim is to do that by harmonizing EU monitoring and reporting, and to increase soil literacy in Europe. One of the very good examples of this mission is the current EU Soil Observatory that we can see here, which is basically mapping in the whole European Union the quality of soils. You can see I picked Reims here, but you can check out almost any region you want on this platform that is freely accessible. In this case, the gray area is soil sealing, which is basically due to urbanization. But it also measures 9 other indicators. For instance, soil biodiversity, metal contamination, compaction, erosion, etc. And this is basically enabling access to information, citizen engagement, and soil literacy. This tool will, of course, be updated, improved over time, but you can already have an overall idea of how it looks like where you live. The third mission we're going to talk about is the Restore Ocean and Waters by 2030. That's not that one, yeah. It aims at restoring the health and natural capital, as its names already says, of ocean and water systems. It's creating an innovative systemic approach that will treat water as one, oceans and clean water as one single ecosystem. It's basically aiming, very ambitious, protecting 30% of the EU's sea areas, trying to restore 25,000 kilometers of free-flowing water, preventing pollution by reducing plastic litter on oceans by 50%, release microplastics by 30%, reduce the use of chemical pesticides by 50%, etc. To reach that goal, we rolled out lighthouses on major European sea and river basins. The idea is to create a framework for cooperation at a basin level that will act as hubs for the development, demonstration, and deployment of new solutions. Each one of them will imply the countries that are nearby, but also the localities, citizens, and to ensure that there's a collective action on numerous approaches to reduce plastic pollution or protecting more sea areas. To kick off that lighthouse approach, we initiated a series of high-level events in each lighthouse basin to mobilize relevant stakeholders and citizens. The last mission that we're going to talk about today is the cities mission. It aims for 100 climate-neutral and smart European cities by 2030, and turning these cities into innovation and experimentation hubs to enable all other European cities to become climate neutral by 2050 in the end. The idea is to experiment on local levels and to then use that experience, knowledge, to then enable a climate neutral continent by 2050. We're already currently working on what we call climate city contracts with the first 100 selected cities, which is developed with citizens, cities, local businesses, regional and national authorities. Yep. So to complement the clusters approach and the missions, we have what we call partnerships. Those partnerships also contribute to reaching our Green Deal targets by employing wide ranges of R&I activities, from concept to demonstration validation to supporting markets and regulatory social uptake. Those are initiatives where the EU, national authorities, and the private sector jointly commit to support the development and implementation of a program of research and innovation activities. The partners can represent industry, universities, research organizations, body with public service remit as local, regional, national, international level, etc. It aims at accelerating the transition towards climate neutral, circular society and economy, achieving sustainable development goals, reaching the Green Deal objectives, basically. We will see today the examples of 2 partnerships, as you can see here, the Clean Hydrogen Partnerships and Water for All, to give a broad overview of how they work and what they're doing concretely. The first one is going to be the Clean Hydrogen Joint Undertaking, which is basically a partnership. The legal name is Joint Undertaking. which is a public-private partnership that covers the entire hydrogen value chain, from the production and storage to the distribution and use. Horizon Europe provides 1 billion euros in funding over the period 2021-2027, which is matched by industry and research partners, so increasing the overall budget for that mission partnership. This will help to achieve the different objectives that are set out in the new European innovation agenda, namely accelerating the deployment of hydrogen valleys in the EU, basically local ecosystems of hydrogen production that imply all types of economic actors and society actors. And yeah, we try to reach the objective of 50 hydrogen valleys in the European Union by 2025. The second partnership I wanted to briefly talk about today is the Water for All, called the Water Security for the Planet, which is basically securing all water demand in terms of quality and quantity, protecting both economic and natural systems, as well as people from water-related hazards. It has a budget of 420 million euros and already covers 80 partners from 31 countries. The idea is to coordinate and leverage the activities of the water R&I community and support and promote demonstrations and access to the markets of innovative solutions. What we want is to produce, share, communicate water-related knowledge and data from local to global scales. But beyond partnerships, mission, clusters, we need to advertise the key exploitable results of Horizon projects, hence the Horizon Results platform. All results that are coming from Horizon financing should end up on that platform, so it is accessible to everybody. The idea is to enable advertising projects to all audiences. And yeah, we also have a video platform on this, HRP-TV, where you can present results of your research and also target your audiences. This is, we're trying to push a bit the Horizon Results platform, since it is not always well known by people financed by Horizon Europe that they are able to actually gain a lot of visibility through that. So we're already getting to the conclusions to wrap up. I hope I gave you a good overview of what we use and what we do on a daily basis at the European Union to try to reach our Green Deal objectives. And what you really need to know is breaking silos is a core element of the Green Deal. Transdisciplinarity is really essential to reach our objectives. As I said, involving citizens, trying to work on local levels as well as national, European, international levels with international partnerships is crucial, especially since research innovation itself is an engine of our work, but it's not the only thing that we have to do to reach our Green Deal objectives. And that's why we need you to help us reach our goals, by improving our understanding of what is going on, by contributing to policy making, etc. And there's one thing I need to add that is not present on the slides, is that if you need information, if you need guidance, if you need any type of further information on Horizon Europe programs, feel free to reach out to your national contact points. This is a network of people who know everything about Horizon Europe, about the missions, about whatever is going on European financing. It's available in all member states and associated countries. And they will help you and guide you through the applications. They will keep you up to date in calls and events. They will basically help you find your way through this very complex, as you might have seen, ecosystem of funding, research support. And yeah, you will find that on the funding and tenders portal of Horizon Europe. So if you type NCP Horizon Europe or National Contact Points Horizon Europe, you will find them without any trouble. There are numerous ones in France, in Germany, in Switzerland, everywhere. So if you have any questions, feel free to reach out either to me, of course you have my contact, I think, in the booklet, or National Contact Points. And that's where we are. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mathieu, for this overview of all the opportunities that we can have. We've seen the program, the financial program of European Union. I have just a quick question,
Sure.
first of all, and then I leave you to just. Can you just explain us well what is the difference between the cluster 6 and the missions? I mean, we always, and I know my colleagues have the same questions. That's why I allow myself to ask the first question. It's true that, I mean, it's even more ambitious to have the missions, but we have problems to define and to see in which way we have to go when we want to apply for the program.
Well, the missions have a different approach than the clusters. The clusters are, well, they aim at financing a bit more advanced TRLs, and the idea, they're not as, let's say, how do you explain that easily? Clusters have broad objectives, but each cluster is divided in specific calls and then topics. The idea is that there is an objective that is defined every 2 years with the work program, where companies, researchers, well, associations of companies apply to get funding on research projects. The missions is more local based. The idea is to try to find concrete solutions, to create synergies on local problems. Missions are not having exactly the same goal as clusters.
Okay, so it's broader.
Sorry?
It's slightly broader than...
Yeah, the clusters, I mean, within clusters you have, as I said, what we call topics. Each topic is one specific call where we have funding that is dedicated to a specific goal. So we're, for instance, saying, all right, now we want a project that will be financing electrification of ships on specific harbors. Mm-hmm. This is a very specific objective on a very specific European goal. This is going to be part of the Cluster 5. And the idea is that by adding those different projects to ensure that we will have technological solutions by the end of the work program, we will find solutions that we can upscale. The missions, on the other hand, is very local based. The idea is, okay, so we have that problem, for instance, plastic pollution in the Mediterranean, or let's say biodiversity reduction in the Arctic and Atlantic oceans. Okay, what can we do to that? First of all, observe. Then also try to reach those objectives where we have specific, broader calls for missions than we have for clusters. I don't know if it's clearer. I try to make it a bit...
But it's true that it's more like developing living labs, etc., whereas Cluster 6 is really an approach, quite specific approach to the topic, so it's more narrow. I hope.
Thank you for clarifying that.
I would like to add that the symposium is under the patronage of the European Commission, and Mathieu Fromentin so came as well to represent the Commission today in that purpose. Do you have any questions?
Thank you for the presentation. I saw that two of the objectives were the neutrality for cities and the soil quality. So to make a small connection between the two, one of the main factors of the depletion of soil quality is the expansion of cities. So this leads me to the question about the no-net land take target. And my question is, what is the agenda of the European Commission to reach no-net land take by 2050, and how is the Directorate-General for Research and Innovation helping in that purpose? Thank you.
You mean the coherence between missions?
What?
You mean the coherence between the different missions and objectives?
No, like what is the agenda for the implementation of the objective in the next years?
The goal of all the missions is to reach their targets by 2030. Yeah. So 100 climate neutral cities by 2030, and then 2050, all cities in Europe ought to be climate neutral. I don't know if this answers your question, but...
My question is about the no-net land take, which is no artificialization of land. You know, like when cities are expanding, they are just take lands from soils.
I must admit I'm not exactly aware of the agenda, but I can get back to you with further details on this. So if I understand your question properly, which I'm not sure I do, sorry. But,
because I think it's part of the, I can check, but it's part of the agenda. But I was just really naively wondering, but we
no
can
new
talk about it.
artificialized soil that you said.
Sorry?
I don't understand what part of the agenda. Sorry,
I will talk about it.
Okay, we can talk.
Yeah,
sorry,
I think maybe it's a quite specific question, so maybe you can answer maybe later during the break.
With pleasure. I'm sorry if I couldn't help
Do
further.
you have any other questions here? Yeah.
Thank you very much for your nice talk. I have a question about the aim to have 100 climate neutral cities till 2030. There's any definition of the size of the city? I mean, it can be 1,000 population?
I mean, we have very different sizes of cities, so it's going to be mostly average, but we have big cities as well. I don't have the list in mind, but I'm aware that, yeah, it's not only small villages or massive capitals that try to reach that goal. But yeah, the 100 climate cities is basically trying to aim at every type of possible urbanized area so that we can gain experience, knowledge, and reach that 2050 targets in the end. So.
Okay, so we have 7 years till 2030 to have 100 cities.
Yeah, we
could
already
you please
have.
give an example of city which we already can call climate
Sorry?
neutral?
Do we already have an example?
Yes.
I'm not aware of an example of already climate neutral cities so far. But as I said, we are currently working on the cities contracts that are involving everybody to prepare, well, let's say, what the action plan is on this urban level and to ensure that they will reach their objectives. So we are currently working on it, and we're very optimistic about the outcomes.
Okay. There is another last question, maybe? Oh, yeah.
So, first, thank you for your talk. I'd like some clarification because it seems like the main mean you're using for sustainable economy, etc.
I'm not sure I can hear you,
research,
sorry.
and it seems like you're pushing forward and say a solution will come by itself. So just one small clarification on this.
I'm sorry, I can't really hear you. Do you mind starting the question again? I'm sorry.
Okay. It seems like the main level you're using is research to develop a sustainable economy, a sustainable society in the EU. And it seemed like, for me, you're pushing forward and say a solution will come by itself, by research, etc. So just one clarification on this.
So you're asking if we also include societal changes and consumption behavior changes in our research and innovation policies?
Yeah.
We do.
Okay.
The idea is to provide not only technological and research changes, but I mean, that's also the point of transdisciplinary studies. The idea is that we're not only working on, well, let's say decarbonizing transport in its very nature, but we're also thinking of how to create cities that will enable people to not use that much transport in the end. We're also working or thinking about different economic models for enterprises, companies, to change consumption habits. The idea is to shift towards new types of consumption, new types of societies that will enable to be climate neutral. Because technology in itself is not going to solve a problem. Technology in itself is not going, I mean, it's completely, let's say, ridiculous to think that we will have one magic silver bullet that will solve our climate change problems. We have to think holistically about climate change. And that's also why, I mean, the missions include citizens, the idea is also, and as François Gémen already mentioned, the most important part is that people have knowledge. People understand what is going on. And then once they have the understanding of the current situation, be it on biodiversity, climate change, plastic pollution, regardless, the idea is that once they have that knowledge, they will start thinking about solutions. They will start working on this as well with you as searchers, but also with us as policymakers. So maybe I focus too much on the technical sides, and that's on me. But we're definitely not working only on the technology side. We're also working on, the whole societal question that will have to undergo profound changes to ensure that we have a sustainable way of life by 2050, especially including the climate change impacts that we are going to experience more and more with the years, where our habits, our current consumption habits, will no longer be compatible with that.
Well, this goes really well with the first presentation of François Gémen about merging disciplines and the importance of that. So is there a last question maybe?
Hello, thank you for your presentation. I know that the European Commission is giving a lot of funding for research, but I want to know if this research should be applied for cities or for projects inside Europe, or it could be applied for, let's say, a project in Africa that has an impact on Europe.
That is one of the elements I didn't mention today. There is a strong international element to Horizon Europe. Basically, the funding is not only available to European member states, it's available for associated countries without specific limitations, but also third countries under specific circumstances. There is no, let's say, geographical remit to our funding. We have partnerships, we have frameworks in which it's really working quite well. I mean, I can give examples on still technological approach, but for instance, mission innovation, where we provide funding and try to follow through this kind of approach. Mission innovation is some kind of a catalyzer on an international level that implies 24 countries on questions like hydrogen or green transport. The idea is to create synergies. We're not working only within the European Union. We also include lots of different states that are willing to also contribute to the global efforts and to also, let's say, try to create synergies and, from which we also benefit a lot from their research policies and their efforts. I mean, I can give examples for instance, Tunisia is a very good example of a country that is very active with us. I mean, it's, the international approach and international aspect of Horizon Europe is a strong point. It's one of the rare elements where there is no specific geographical remit for the research and innovation policies.
Okay, very well. And it's as well a big effort that's been done in Horizon Europe, comparing with Horizon 2020, seems like. Okay, so Mathieu, thank you very much. We can